Welcome back, everyone, to the Behind the ERG podcast. As always, I'm your host, Edward, and we are back with another amazing and exciting episode. We've got a really special guest here today, and I'm really keen for them to kind of share their insights, talk about their career journey, the amazing things they're doing in and out of the workplace, and also share some gems with you, as that's one thing we like to do on this podcast, drop gems to help you in your own career or business journey or transition. Now, without further ado, I am going to share some background of our guest and some of the achievements and accolades that they have done in their career. So, our guest is the head of customer sales and service capabilities at Capgemini, with over 20 years of experience in the IT industry, with a deep expertise in Salesforce implementation. His work enables organizations to accelerate transformation through customer centric design and intelligent CRM solutions. And if you're unfamiliar with those terms, we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. Alongside that, our guest also leads the most influential DEI structures in global consultancy. He's the chair of Capgemini's UK's Race Equality Network, also known as REN, and also the global co-chair of CulturALL. And we'll talk in more detail what CulturALL is. CulturALL unites 18 networks across over 160 nationalities. And beyond that, he supported over 40 black women and over 200 participants through a mentoring scheme with Niyo Group. Without further ado, I'd love to introduce our guest, Tokeer Ahmed, also known affectionately as Tox, to friends, family, and peers. Welcome, Tox.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. And actually, it's nice and quite validating and humbling when you kind of did the intro. So thank you so much for that.
No, thank you for giving us your time. And as always on the Behind the ERG podcast, we start with a bit of well-being check. So, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah,
I'm feeling good. A little bit tired,
yeah,
but good in a nice way.
love that. And what's one thing this week that's brought you joy?
One thing that's brought me joy, actually, yesterday. I was in one of our offices, and a new apprentice came up to me and introduced themselves, and they said that they recognised me, right? And they said, "Oh, are you Tokeer?" And I've seen some stuff on LinkedIn, and I saw that you're the chair of the Race and Equality Network, and they kind of said, "Oh, it's really good to see somebody doing that, and I'm really happy that I've joined this company because it's good to know that there are people that are supporting those types of initiatives." And that was nice
Yeah,
because it's those moments, right? No matter how big or small, and sometimes the smaller, like water cooler moments. That's what that was, right? It was just like a passing thing, but sometimes that makes the work that we all do to help and support, networks, etc., really worthwhile, right? So it was really nice. It did bring me a lot of joy, and I thought, no, that's nice because somebody's, you know, put that together with joining a company, and that was potentially one of the reasons why they joined, right? And why they might have applied. So yeah, it's really, really nice.
love that. And that's the power of personal branding as well. And one of the things I always talk about is having a value beyond your role when it comes to your organization. So that demonstrates your value in terms of being an advocate for people who are looking at opportunities within your organization, and your achievements influencing them in that decision, which is powerful.
Yeah.
One thing I want to do next, and this is for the tech gurus. So, if your life was a Salesforce dashboard, what KPI would you say is currently trending upwards?
Um, I would probably say impact.
Yeah,
Um, and that doesn't necessarily mean um, huge amounts of things that you are doing, right? And a little bit like what I was saying about that conversation, right? it's sometimes those key impact driven things that you can initiatives that you can kind of foresee, and sometimes you can look at the kind of end goal, right? Where you want to be, and then you kind of work backwards, yeah. And if you can see the most impactful ones kind of play out in your mind, right? And that's what we tend to do. So I would say, yeah, impact driven or impact on a KPI dashboard is probably what I'm aiming for and what we've been aiming for the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's powerful. And before we go into talking more about your career and all the amazing achievements you've done in IT and technology, just for people who may be new to the space, what's the CRM? So they have awareness of what that is.
Yeah, so CRM is customer relationship management. So lots of customer centric organizations, but where it be retail, banking, um, public sector, all those that have customers will use a system to sell, buy, track their customers, right? And it all is kind of encapsulated in a CRM. So it's a hugely powerful digital asset, and you're able to track a whole customer's journey, right from before they're even a customer all the way through to selling them something, buying something from them, shipping it out, all the way through to maybe they have an issue. It's like a customer case, the marketing part, all of that, right? It's the entire end to end. That's the whole spectrum of CRM. So it is very broad. But yeah, using some cloud-based tools to kind of power that. And the one that I have been working with for the last 20 years is Salesforce.
Yeah.
So that, and I use Salesforce to implement those solutions for our clients, and that's what I've basically been doing for the last 20 years.
Yeah. And in that period of 20 years, there's been so many shifts in the industry, especially the tech industry. And the buzzword at the moment now is around AI. So, one thing I want to ask you next is how have you kept and remained inspired across all these industry shifts in the tech space?
Yeah, so you have to have the kind of agile mindset. You have to be a bit of a natural kind of problem solver, right? And those are the attributes that I had even when I was a child, right? I was quite inquisitive and I really liked technology. I was a huge fan of gadgets. I still am. And my wife is probably sometimes pulling her hair out because I spend far too much,
Yeah.
money on like things that we don't really need. But I was always a gadget fan, right? And a bit of a problem solver. So those attributes, I think, those are the ones that complement the technology and digital world, right? Because then you are kind of naturally always going to be looking at, well, what next? How can we make this more optimized? What other stuff can we bring in? How can we make it easier, right? And the whole point of it is the translation to how we make stuff more automated and flowing for a person.
Yeah.
Because it is actually the whole point of it, the CRM part, the first part is customer, right? And what is customer? It's people. So it actually comes down to making it easier for people to navigate, their sales journey on a product, or, healthcare if they've got an appointment, or a hospitality if they've got a booking. It's all of that, right? It's trying to make it easier, basically. So
That's
yeah, it's trying to be abrupt, trying to be at the forefront, and it makes it exciting because it's been changing for the last 20 years, and that's why I'm still, hopefully you can see, I'm still really passionate about that, and it really excites me, and especially now because We're at a kind of place where it's almost AI is almost a bit like when the internet started, right? So we're at that place where everyone's trying to figure it out, but it's actually really exciting because if used well, it's so hugely powerful, and it's basically going to change the way that we not work or how we implement, how we live. So it's going to change the way how we live, just the way things like cars and the internet came in, and it changed our day-to-day life.
And that's really insightful, and that kind of nicely segues into the next question, which is twofold. So, what are the key skills people need to thrive in the role you do? And then beyond that, how do you balance the importance of technical capability with a customer centric approach in the role that you do as well?
Okay. So some of the key skills are some of the ones that I've alluded to,
Yeah.
right? So definitely problem solving, kind of analysis mindset, agility, having the appetite and the aptitude to learn and grow, right? And making sure that you don't fear failure,
Yeah.
because in the kind of tech world, there is a lot of times where you will create proof of concepts, etc., and they won't be, they might not be successful. So you can't have, if you're a perfectionist, I would say, don't go into tech
Yeah.
because you have to go through cycles and cycles of trying to get it right, or
Yeah.
trying to get it just right for a person, a product. So, yeah, I think those agility, open-minded, problem solver, I would say those are kind of the key kind of skills that somebody should have. And then you mentioned about
Managing the
technology.
importance of technical capabilities with a customer centric approach in your role.
Okay. So basically, the two things go hand in hand, right? They where it becomes less successful, and I've seen this in throughout the 20 years, right? I've seen where it's less successful is when people try and do it separated, right? So you can have like the world's most intuitive and user friendly application you've ever seen, right? And then nobody thought about the back end, and it's not able to technically collate all that information and report correctly, right? And on the flip side, you could have it the other way, right? Where basically you've got like a really technically strong, sound, architected application that is going to give you so much insight for your customer, but it's not usable. It's not very friendly. It's not asking the right questions. It's not giving people that experience, right? So the successful ones are ones where they bring it together, right? And it does start off having the customer in the center of it all,
Yeah.
right? And again, when I say customer, what I really mean is people, right? So putting the person, how is the person actually going to be used this? What value are they going to give? And I go back to that analogy that I used, I think, at the start, right? Where I said, you look at your goal and you kind of see, you kind of work backwards from where you want to be. So you actually go, actually, if I had a blank page and I wanted it to be a really successful project, what would that customer or person be doing, right? And then you go from there, and then you work backwards and you kind of go, okay, what do I need to put in place to actually get there, right? And that's most of the successful projects that I've been involved in, they've put people first and they've put the value first and then kind of figured out the journey.
And that's really insightful in terms of the integration between technical capability and that customer centric
Absolutely.
approach, especially with the customer being at the center of everything that you do. On
100%.
that, and this is going to be the last question, kind of focusing on this area. If someone wanted to start a career in that tech space in 2026, what advice would you give to them in terms of doing that?
So I would say have that passion for technology, right? So make sure that you are comfortable with tech, and you've kind of got that base level kind of passion, right? Because you might be really passionate about you could be very outdoorsy. I'm giving a bit of a stereotypical kind of response to what a tech person is, right?
Yep.
But you could be really outdoorsy and you could want to, climb mountains and all of that, right? And obviously you can absolutely do that when you're in tech, right? But make sure that the things that kind of make you tick, you've got that kind of passion. So the baseline for technology kind of needs to be there, right? The other part that I would say is that don't be afraid to kind of take risks, right? And don't be risk averse. Yeah. I would say kind of take those risks. So have the mindset that I'm going to take the risks. A bit like what I was saying around the fear of failure, right? People sometimes get put off because they think that you need to have those skills right at the start, but you don't, right? And for example, when I first started my career, I went into an IT support role. So academically I studied computer science, and then I struggled a little bit because I didn't actually get a role for like a while. But the first role that I got, it was IT support, and I worked for this huge kind of tooling company, but it was their internal IT, right? And then about a year in, they were going to introduce a CRM. You can see where this is going, right?
Yep.
They were going to introduce a CRM. And that CRM was Salesforce. And what actually happened was the person that was meant to do it left the company. And then the next week, they kind of gave me this manual. And they said, "Oh, Tuck, we want you to, would you want to do this?" And I had no idea what it was, right? So that's how I became into CRM and Salesforce, right? Because then I helped them implement it. I became the Salesforce admin. So I was kind of helping them, right? And then a few years later, about 7 years later, they actually shut that plant down. It was based in Birmingham, and the IT kind of moved to either Czech Republic or Germany. So they shut it down and we were made redundant. And at that point, I started to put my CV out there in the very early days of LinkedIn.
Yep.
This is circa 2011, 2012. And at that time, that's when I got the call about the role at Capgemini. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because the call happened. So I answered and they said, "Oh, we're so-and-so from X recruiting company. And there's a company called Capgemini, and they're looking for Salesforce consultants." And I literally just went, "Oh, I'm not a consultant, put the phone down." Right? And then the person, thank God they called me back, because they were kind of like, "Oh, I think you cut us off," and in my head I was thinking, "No, I'll put the phone down." But anyway, right? and it was my naivety, right? Because I was like, and they said, "No, they're not. To be a consultant, you can be a number of things, right? They're just looking for people that have got knowledge in Salesforce. And then I was like, oh, okay. So I kind of went for the interview. Long story short, ended up getting the role, right? And I was still really naive because I was like going in and I was still really nervous because I thought, wow, they're going to like think that I know about Salesforce, which I did, right? And then it cuts to me a couple of years into the role at Capgemini when I was a junior consultant. And guess what the things that I am doing in that role? I'm doing problem solving. I'm communicating with people. I'm got the appetite to learn, right? All of those skills are at the forefront of consulting.
Yeah.
And I was so naive because I just saw the word consultant and I thought that's like an expert role. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that, right? So what I will say is anybody starting out, don't take the label too seriously and never underestimate the power of you, right? Your baseline skill set as a person is actually probably enough to get you started in the tech sector.
Wow, inspiring story. And I really like the emphasis on taking risks because sometimes, especially in our careers, people can be very risk averse and and I don't want to say stuck, but embedded in traditional ways in terms of what
Absolutely.
a career looks like. And I know a lot of the things spoken about publicly now is squiggly careers and people being transitioned into careers that they may not have initially thought was for them, but careers in which I guess amplify and utilize their skill set as best as possible.
Absolutely. I've met so many people, Ed, where they're in the tech sector now, but in they were a store manager in retail.
Yeah.
They did a law degree. They were in pharmaceuticals. Like, they were in finance. So the squiggly concept that you just mentioned, absolutely, right? There's no kind of set way to get into any sector really, but particularly in the tech sector, especially now because we are so used to having technology all around us, right? In the 20 years or so, there was a time when if somebody said to you, you're going to have this electronic device and literally you're going to have it in your pocket and you're going to take it everywhere and you're going to sleep with it and you're going to be listening to it.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago, you'd be like, yeah, right. Nah, never going to happen. Right. And ta-da, we've all got phones.
Yeah.
Right. And which is, again, now evolving into whatever it will be in the future with AI. And, there's a lot of cool stuff out there, like the wearables and stuff like that. But yeah, right. So you wouldn't have thought that 20 years ago.
Yeah, agreed. And what I'm going to say is if you're listening, please share, subscribe, and comment because Tox is dropping gems and really insightful information in terms of how you can develop your career, whether you're at an entry level space in your career or mid level, senior level, or looking to transition from senior level to executive level. And on that topic, I just want to touch very quickly on his credentials before we move into the next section of the conversation. So, Tox is someone who's a winner of the Diversity Ally of the Year award at the Digital Revolution Awards. He's also an Empower Top 20 Ethic Minority Role Model, Top 50 Influential Muslims in Europe, recognized for that. He's also a finalist at the European and British Diversity Awards, nominated for Role Model of the Year at the inaugural Multicultural Inspire Awards in Birmingham, a key supporter of the King's Trust, and a board member for Boycott Your Bed. So there's accolades behind what he's saying, and a lot of the things he's highlighted, he's put into practice for himself, which has led to his own achievements. Before I continue, where I want to kind of touch on next is some of the work you do when it comes to uniting communities. And I'm going to start that conversation by focusing on cultural.
Yeah.
So I know cultural is a community of 18 staff networks that embodies over 160 nationalities. Now, the first question I want to ask on that is what motivated you to start that, and what gap is cultural aiming to address?
Yeah. So the motivation was a collective idea of absolutely that, Ed, in bringing people together, right? Bringing people that are doing amazing things together. So like a meeting of amazing minds, right? That was the kind of conceptual. But in terms of the actual kind of value and the kind of, you know, how and why, that was mainly to do with, we had lots of people doing fantastic work but like working in silo, and what we didn't have was a space for almost that network of networks to come
Yeah,
together and share ideas. And actually, guess what? Some of those ideas were very similar from, say, somebody in Australia to somebody in
yeah,
Poland and somebody in the UK, right? And then what also happens is then somebody from America would say, "Oh, we did that last year." So then it kind of became and is this platform to share knowledge, to talk about our successes, to talk about our challenges, and to kind of help each other, right? And then where we can, what we try and do is have kind of global conversations, whether that be in kind of virtual settings, in actual like meetings or events, virtual events, or whether that just be with a small group or like a one-on-one like you and me
yeah,
are having. So what it's done is it's opened some doors of more collaboration, more alignment, and really more understanding of each other, right? And the other part, which is really important, is the experience of individuals is very different depending on who you are and where you are,
yeah,
right? So the black experience for somebody in the UK as a person of black heritage is very different to if you are of black heritage in the
yeah,
US. And the same can be said if you are of Southeast Asian heritage, South Asian heritage, like myself, right?
yeah,
So that was the other educational aspect. And even for myself, I always say, you know, a lot of people say every day is a learning day, right?
yeah,
But the amount of stuff that I've learned, like I had no idea about some of the South Asian experience in Australia. I was completely oblivious to it. But again, right, all of those, when you start to have that, what is that actually making? It's making us broader. It's making our mind space broader and more acknowledging of all the fantastic, you know, cultures and ethnicities that we've got throughout the world.
yeah. That's really powerful and inspiring that you touched on the nuances geographically. My role primarily has been an international one, so being able to go to different locations across different continents, you actually see those nuances, and I think it's very much tailored by the environment in terms of what people's experiences are. On that point, what I want to ask in terms of cultural, founded this community, built it up to encompass so much diversity in terms of nationalities and people. What would you say is your proudest achievement to date when it comes to cultural?
I think the proudest achievement is probably some of the some of the feedback that we've had, we've actually been able to put into policy and actually change some of the policy that we had within the company, right? So that's probably the proudest achievement, that we've actually been able to take some of that fantastic dialogue and actually shape some of the company. And, you know, people reaching out and saying, we would really love your view on X, Y, and Z. So I think that is, if you can get to a point where the value is you're able to evoke change, I think, you know, for me, that's a really proud moment.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. And another thing that you do that I'm going to touch on as well is you're also UK chair for a race and ethnicity network. And the question I want to ask on that is, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions that are attached to leading a race and ethnicity network?
So I think the biggest one, and this probably goes for a lot of ERGs,
Yeah,
right? Biggest kind of misconception is that they're about complaining.
yeah,
And time again, people that have not been exposed to anything like that before, the first thing that they, you know, that I've heard that they will kind of say is, oh, isn't that just a place for, and then ... complete the sentence, right? And usually that's kind of alluding to a place where somebody that looks or sounds like XYZ, yeah, kind of getting together and complaining, and that is the biggest misconception, right? Because as you know as well as I do, Ed,
yeah,
that's not what happens
yeah,
there at all. So yeah, that's probably the biggest misconception,
yeah,
that I think people think that it's a place to kind of vent and complain.
yeah. And it's a good point to highlight because that's where these networks can feel a bit like a union. And one of the things that I lead a network now as well is being able to kind of reinforce the mission around what the purpose of the network is, what they do and don't do, and being able to kind of signpost people to the various forums that are available for them to go to, especially specific queries that are in relation to their own experience
Absolutely, yeah.
in an organization. On that, I just want to ask, you obviously have a very important role at Capgemini. You founded CulturALL. You're also the chair, so the UK chair of the Race and Ethnicity Network. How are you able to kind of like incorporate community and advocating for people from underrepresented groups in everything that you do?
How do I do that in... So it's something that I always say to people, that diversity and inclusion, I didn't found it, it found me.
Mm,
So people sometimes have a misconception that well, number one, and I'm sure you've had this, Ed, sometimes they think that's my only role.
yeah,
And I'm like, no, that's not my only role.
yeah,
That's a part of
yeah,
what I do. Um, and people also think that I've been doing it for 20 years.
yeah,
But actually, spoiler alert, I've only actively been doing it since 2019, 2020,
yeah,
which isn't that long in the grand scheme of things, right? And basically, I think I'm a very people orientated person. So I love people. I love kind of understanding people. And that's something that's natural, and it's part of what I do in my kind of tech role as well, right? But I think what happened was I unlocked a skill that I probably had all along, but I wasn't ever able to see it. And that was, I was actually quite good at bringing people together, right? Bringing all different types of people together. I was really good at that kind of networking and then providing a platform for networking. So that's where it kind of comes from, Ed. It's that passion, right? So I'm like really genuinely, authentically, really passionate about that. So it's kind of become part of who I am now. And I think it was always there.
Yeah.
I think it was always there. And the funny thing is in 2020, I got asked to be the chair of the Race and Equality Network. And at that moment in time, I was really unsure. And there were two people, somebody called Nicola and Pam, right? And they both said to me, you can do this. We can see that you'll be able to do this. And I had doubts. I had a bit of what you may call imposter
Yeah.
syndrome, although I've kind of got over my journey of imposter syndrome now. But yeah, so I didn't really want to do it, right? But I think they saw that. They must have seen that in me. And I wasn't at that moment in time. Even when asked to be the chair, I didn't fully recognize it. And then I started doing it. And then within a year, I saw the light bulb moment. And I thought, you know what, I'm actually really good at this. And that's good, you can say it in a humbling way, right? And it's actually quite good. So this is a very long-winded answer. I'm really sorry.
No, no,
But
it's good.
where it's taking me is that you can be grounded, continue to be humble, but I would really stress to people that the things that you are good at, shout about them, right? And even if that's shouting to yourself about them, right? Because that's great fuel. So I've been fueled by, my catalyst is kind of looking at all the great attributes and magnifying them and kind of going, yeah, and that I would say is be your own. You should be your own champion, because that's when other people become your champion as well, right? Is if you're your own champion as well.
Yeah.
And I kind of probably went into it a little bit kind of semi hot, right? Because I was kind of like questioning it, but somebody at that moment in time saw the potential, right? And they were like, no, we think you can do this. And so that within itself was a little bit of confidence to me, right? And then yeah, they were right, because then everything else followed, right? So all the stuff, and I'm so grateful for having that opportunity, right? Because everything else that you mentioned, in the bio and all of that, it's 90%, because I went into that role and I was able to kind of bring people together and, then take people on that journey and get value and evoke change and all of that. But it all kind of came from kind of being part of that initial community and then being asked to be chair.
Yeah. And that's a really powerful testament to the importance of advocacy, because your peers were
Absolutely.
able to see traits in you when it comes to leading a staff network that you may have not initially been aware of. And it sounds like they were right in doing that. What I want to ask next is, and you touched on it in terms of being able to not just champion yourself, but champion other people and bring people along with you on a journey. And as someone that leads a race and ethnicity network, you are bringing people on a journey from not just your own background, but many other backgrounds. And what I want to talk about now is allyship. And what I want to ask you on that point is, how important is allyship to you as someone that's won an award in Diversity Ally of the Year at the Digital Revolution Awards? And how do you incorporate that in what you do?
So it's incredibly important. I would say that I was on that. Funnily enough, I was on a panel last year where somebody described allyship, and they said, "Oh, we don't really like the term allyship, but we should call it champions," right? And I just used the terminology
Yeah,
champion
yeah,
before, right? And so it is. It's like it's very important to be that champion, right? But what's even more important is it's not just it's not just lip service, right? It's what happens when the doors are closed, right? It's um what sound bites, it's what insight you can bring about a person when the kind of doors are closed, basically. So it's not it's how you can kind of influence and shape other people's journeys, right? And I always say, I said before, right, around the actions, and it doesn't matter how small or big, right? Sometimes those small conversations absolutely matter, because it's happened with me where I've championed people, and it can just be like two sentences, right? And you say, "Have you thought about," because they're doing, and the person will go, "I didn't think about that person, but thank you." And then 2 weeks down the road, that person's now got that role, right? So sometimes it's just the really small things. It can also obviously be the bigger
yeah,
things. So promotions, um, you know, new roles, new initiatives, putting people forward that may not have those networks, right? Um, so yeah, absolutely. I think it's about who you back in closed rooms. For me, that's what true allyship and championing really is. It's what you're doing when no one's watching,
yeah,
right? And that's really what true allyship actually is, right?
yeah. And I think it's powerful that you've highlighted that, because one of the things I always talk about is there's performative allyship and then there's practical allyship. And on that topic of practical allyship, one of the things I want to touch on next is your involvement with the Niyo Group. So I know within that you've supported over 40 black women, and they had a program that had over 200 participants. For myself and the listeners, what is the Niyo Group, and why do you feel these mentoring programs are important, and what are the key barriers from your experience that the women on the program faced, and how has the program been able to support them in unlocking that? It's a bit of a loaded question, but hopefully you can
Sure. No,
share some
absolutely.
experience on that.
So Niyo Group is a fantastic organisation headed by a kind of powerhouse woman called Oyen, and what it's trying to do is it's trying to plug a gap in the market where we know that we need people to be more skilled in the kind of STEM area, particularly tech, right? And so what it's doing is it's kind of focusing on women who are either at the start of their career journey, they're looking for a change, they've maybe come back from maternity. So it's targeting black females and getting them into the tech sector. And some of it is, actual like coding, that type of thing, right? Some of it is kind of non-coding and just kind of general technologists. That's what it's doing. So what it's doing is creating that platform and opportunity of people to skill slash reskill. And it's so important, right? Because there is a shortage, right? There is a shortage of people that don't know that much about technology and some of the roles that we've got, right? And this is a fantastic way to kind of plug that gap. And you know, a lot of the people, the women that have been mentored, you know, got absolutely those fascinating career journeys. And you talked about the kind of squiggle
Yeah.
earlier, right? That's exactly what it is. And it's people who are pivoting their careers into tech. So it's kind of creating that platform for them, Ed, and like help and guiding them, and then hopefully championing them into roles. Um,
That sounds really powerful. And what we will do is share some information around the Niyo Group in the description as well for people who may want to find more information to support or and get involved in the program as well. We've spoken in depth around race. What I want to move on to now is faith. And we touched on it earlier, but I'm going to repeat it. You was recognized as one of the top 50 influential Muslims in Europe. How do you carry that? I don't want to say responsibility, but how do you carry that identity with you in the workplace and beyond?
yeah, so it's first of all hugely humbled
Yeah,
by it, right? Um, and you know, if you told the 15-year-old me who, you know, I live in quite a socially deprived area of outer Birmingham, right? And you know, we didn't have a lot growing up. And so if you told the 15-year-old me that this is, you know, cuts to it, you know, I don't think it would even kind of compute, right,
yeah,
that would happen. So first of all, hugely humbling and hugely grateful, but it's beyond the accolade, right? And you mentioned the word, funnily enough, Ed, you just mentioned the word responsibility. And I do think of it like that, right? So it's a responsibility for us to drive more synergy, collaboration, um, education. So I've seen it as a bit of a kind of, I don't want to use the word petrol,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
I've seen it as like fuel,
yeah,
because I've looked at it and thought, amazing, grateful for the accolade, but actually it's about what you do next, right? And it's how can you continue. And again, when I say that, I'm not saying that, you know, I want to, it's not fuel is in the sense that you want to build something even
yeah,
bigger, right? No, it's not sometimes about quantity, right? It's about that quality and impactful things that you can do. So yeah, for me, it's that responsibility, and it's given me fuel to continue.
yeah. And that's again an inspiring way to look at it in terms of your motivations around the responsibility that you have and how you handle that responsibility, especially where you shared earlier that your advocacy in being open in your background, your faith is inspiring other people, people that you don't even know personally. On that topic, the work you do crosses a number of communities and protected characteristics. And with that responsibility, unfortunately, attracts scrutiny. And I'm not saying that specifically happened to yourself, but what I want to know is when you're being recognized with so much internal, external attention in terms of the work you do, how do you tackle or how do you respond to any scrutiny around your work? And how do you remain resilient in those periods as well?
So I think, Ed, the resilience probably comes from um, being who I am from like a younger age, right? So I think coming from a generation where, when I was at school, or even when I first started in that role that I mentioned after university, right? No one talked about diversity,
Yeah.
inclusion. Um, you it wasn't said, right? Um, so I think with that, what happens is that you kind of build up a resilience already, right? So I think I don't know whether to say fortunate or
Yeah.
unfortunate in that I think I've already got my toolkit already has resilience in there because that's probably years of having it from since I was at primary school, right? So I think resilience, yeah, has kind of always been there. The scrutiny, I would say, is you have to respect that it's somebody's opinion and that you might not agree with it, right? It's how you kind of deal with it in a kind of positive way, right? So my kind of thought process around that is that yeah, it's that person's opinion. How can you maybe tell them your perspective, right? But I would refrain from the bite back. So it's human nature, right? Is that if you are criticized or if somebody attacks you, it's almost our kind of animalistic instinct is to do the same back, right? So it takes a lot to, refrain from kind of biting back and, you respect that it's somebody's opinion. And if you use your own words authentically, sometimes that's really powerful, right? Back that if you kind of give your point of view, if you do want to respond to the
Yeah.
scrutiny, I mean, sometimes you don't, right? Because you kind of go, actually, I don't think that's even worth a response. But sometimes, you do respond back. But I think if you do it in a way that, deflate and also um, um, in a way that's authentic to yourself, then I would kind of say, that's probably the way. Sorry, I've not not done that question
No, but
right.
I think that's something that really resonated with me personally because similar to what you shared earlier, a lot of people think I've been in this kind of space for many, many years, and I've probably been in it for maybe 12, 18 months. And with that, I guess, increased visibility of your work comes scrutiny because you can't serve everyone or you can't serve everyone to the expectation that they may have that you can serve them to. So you
Absolutely.
have to navigate some of those difficult conversations and also be very transparent with people in terms of what their expectations of you and an individual should be, as a whole community or a number of communities can't rely on any sole individual for their evolution or advocacy.
Absolutely, Ed. So I'm completely aligned with that. It's about creating those spaces, but then also you have to kind of be realistic, right?
Yeah.
Exactly like what you've said. So you have to reflect back and also make it known that you can help um, in a way that, be it small or big, you can help it in this way, but it's not all on you, right? Absolutely. Like what you said,
Yeah.
we haven't got all the
Yeah.
answers. and people come to us sometimes, and we don't know what the
Yep.
answer is, and you have to work it through. And sometimes it is I'm really sorry, let's figure it out, or let's figure it out together. Or you then tap into some of the wider network that that we've created, and say, I can't help you, but I know somebody that can.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, it would be completely unrealistic to say that you would be able to help and support every single person, right?
Yep.
But that's why really when I mentioned about the value driven approach around initiatives, where the most impactful initiatives are the ones that kind of provide a lot of value across a whole spectrum of people, right? So those are the ones would be the big ticket items. So if you're ever fortunate enough to be involved in anything like that, like the mentoring that you mentioned about around Niyo and similar type initiatives, those are the ones, right? So if you're ever fortunate to be involved in something like that, those are the ones where you've actually got a huge subset of people that are actually benefiting, right?
Yep.
And the most fulfilling ones as well.
Yeah, agreed. And we've spoken about the work you do to support various racial groups, and we also spoke about the advocacy you do for faith groups. One of the last things I want to touch on is the work you do to support the next generation, and that encompasses the work you do with the King's Trust and also Boycott Your Bed,
Yeah.
Action for Children. Now, firstly, I want to ask, what is Boycott Your Bed?
Yeah.
And then beyond that, why is youth empowerment important to you?
So Boycott Your Bed is a fantastic initiative that was set up by somebody called Ken Deeks, MBE, right? And it raises money for Action for Children. So believe it or not, this stat will shock you. There's 4.3 million children in the UK that are living in poverty,
Wow.
right? That's stunning, right? What Boycott Your Bed is that for one night in the year, we essentially boycott our beds. So what we do is we sleep out, and obviously prior to that, we're like fundraising, raising money, getting sponsorships, and all the money is going to Action for Children.
Yeah.
So Action for Children is the charity, and Boycott Your Bed is the event
Okay.
that takes place, and it's taken place for a number of years, and it's a collective, so it's across a lot of cities in the UK, so Glasgow, Cardiff, Manchester, London. There's a few others in there as well, and yeah, people come together and we do a few activities, and then we sleep outside for one night, and it's all raising money for Action for Children.
Wow. And why is youth empowerment important to you?
So youth empowerment, I'm so passionate about it because, one, it's the next generation, right? And we're in abundance of talent, right? But opportunity isn't,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's why I'm so passionate about uncovering untapped, people, areas, and making sure that no matter who you are, where you're from, you're given that opportunity. Yeah. And there's a big difference, Ed, between the actual thing and the opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And there's a huge misconception And people always think that it's the thing. And I've always said it's not the thing, it's the opportunity to have the thing. The actual end is down to the individual, right? It's the individual that kind of blazes their trail, right, to get to where they get to. But if they haven't got the opportunity to get there, then I think that's a little bit of an injustice, right? And the grassroots way of basically doing it is through youth empowerment.
Yeah.
And that imbalance really kind of bothers me, Ed. And you can tell, right, I'm really passionate about making sure that we give people that opportunity. And actually, and so that's why there's the work that I do with the King's Trust and Action for Children. But I think, Ed, underneath it all, right, and I don't want this to be a therapy session, right, between you and me, but I think underneath it, there's a kind of subtext of me when I was younger and maybe not seeing that opportunity and maybe not seeing people that looked and sounded like me in some of the stuff that I wanted to do, right? Yeah. And so I think there's that underlining kind of subtext to it. But yeah, absolutely. We must create that opportunity. And that's why, you know, the grassroots youth empowerment is so important. So I would say to the viewers and the listeners that, look, if you get a chance to give back, please consider youth empowerment, because it's who we are going to be in 10, 15, 20 years' time, right?
Yeah.
So please look at that.
Thank you. And that's really inspiring, especially because of the work you do across those bodies and explain to us kindly what Boycott Your Bed is. And it sounds like a very important, impactful initiative. So we'll share details around that in the description as well.
Thank you.
I wouldn't be able to do justice to this conversation without mentioning the Plank Challenge. And anyone who follows Talks on LinkedIn will know about the Plank Challenge. So for our listeners or people who are new to you, can you please explain why you started a Plank Challenge and what it looks to achieve?
So the Plank Challenge was born out of, in 2024, I did a push-up challenge for cancer research. And then last year in 2025, the push-up challenge was for 30 days, you did 100 push-ups every day, right? And you raised money for fantastic charity, Cancer Research UK, which is that's something else that is very close to my heart, because I've had family and friends that have been through cancer treatment. Sadly, some of them are no longer with us. So that's kind of where that comes from. So last year, it wasn't push-ups, and it was it was a plank a day for 30 days, right? So then and it just happened. It really happened really organically, Ed, right? And again, like, you know, this is what I always say, that the authentic factor of you is the one that creates the most amount of magic, right? So what I started doing last year was I started posting some photos of me doing said planks, right? And then I started just choosing. I happened to be in London, so I like did a plank like in front of Tower Bridge and stuff like that, right? And then it just started to become a bit of a thing, right? So it just kind of got born out of that. And I actually started to get so many comments of, we're loving the locations, right? So then everywhere that I went in that month, I just started to, you know, do the plank.
Yeah.
And I happened to have my wife and my daughter, we went to Cairo. And we've not been to Egypt before, and really lucky enough to like go there last year. So obviously, you know what's coming, right?
Yeah.
It was like people were messaging me saying, "Oh, we're really looking forward to the next location," and I was like, "Oh, mate, I'm going to pull this out of the bag," because then came the pyramids,
Yeah.
and somebody messaged me, and they were like, "Oh, great use of Photoshop,
Oh,
Tuck,"
wow.
and I was like, no, I am there. I
Yeah.
can send you a video,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Oh, wow, we had no idea." So it kind of got born out of that. Now, what really happened, which was like a really nice moment for me, that after the plank challenge had ended in April, I got loads of messages on LinkedIn, and people actually, some people who I knew, they said it to me kind of physically that, "Oh, you should carry on. We really love the
Yeah.
locations." So then I did. That was where the 100 days, 100 planks was born out of. And something else that I'm also a bit like the 4.3 million children poverty stat. At the start of last year, I found out a stat and I was so ashamed that I did not know it, right? So the stat was that I think there's minimum 3 women in the UK per week that get killed by a partner or ex-partner, right? And I was like this is shocking, right? So shocking. And I found that out through, like, I happened to be on some links for Women's Aid, and that's how I found that out. And so then that's where those two things came together, because I wanted to then support a charity that is actually doing work that is actually a crisis in the UK, just like the child poverty one.
Yeah.
So is women and children's violence, right? And domestic abuse. So that's where the 100 days, 100 planks came from. And yeah, the locations started to get more elaborate as I
Yeah.
did those planks. But yeah, people really got behind it, and I'm really, really grateful to the people that kind of got behind it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And it's an innovative way to advocate for such an important cause as we enter into Women's History Month as well, and International Women's Day amongst that. So we'll share information in the description around Women's Aid and how people can support that too.
Absolutely.
I'm
Thank you.
going to wrap up by asking you the question from our previous guest, Yasmin, as part of the Pass the Mic segment on this podcast. And what I want to ask is, what are you as a person outside of your day job? So what's the talks that your friends, family, and peers see? That would be good to know.
So I am probably pretty much the same as I am. I'm pretty much the same as
Yeah.
I am outside of the workplace as I am inside the workplace, right? And I'll be very open and honest with you. It's a journey, right? So I probably wasn't always my most authentic self,
Yeah.
right? And again, this probably comes a little bit from childhood, in that I always wanted to fit in. And and it's quite typical of somebody who is an ethnic minority or somebody who is from a minority group, right? Is that you try so hard to fit in
Yeah.
to the larger group,
Yeah.
right? And then however many years down the line, you have a bit of an epiphany moment, right? Where for me, it's never about fitting in.
Yeah.
It's about how we fit together
Yeah.
that counts, right? So everyone is different. everyone is an intersection of themselves, right? And it's about how you fit together that truly matters. So, in all honesty, Ed, I'm probably the same tuck
Yeah.
as I am at home. I'm probably a little bit more animated.
Yeah.
I'm probably a little bit more theatrical. um, and it's probably a less toned down version
Yeah.
of of kind of who I am. But the person who I am is that people orientated, and I'd like to think I care um about people, and I've got that passion about, definitely about giving back,
Yeah.
and that's what I try to do outside of work. And I'm really fortunate that in my workplace I'm able to bring a lot of that into the workplace as well as outside of the workplace.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really like that concept of it's not about fitting in, it's about fitting together. And that's really important as we have an ever developing multicultural society across the UK and beyond. Before I go on to the last bit of the podcast, just want to say thank you, Tox, for all the work you do in the Midlands, all the advocacy you do for so many different groups, our Asian peers, our Black women in STEM, the next gen, moving them off TikTok and into other careers and showing them the other opportunities beyond social media as well. So thank you for doing that. And hopefully in 2026, we see an even longer list of accolades for you next time we bring you on to have one of these conversations.
Thank you, Ed.
I'm going
I
to wrap
appreciate
up
that.
anytime. I'm just going to wrap up by asking you to set a challenge or question for the next guest.
So I would say to the next guest is, what's the one thing that makes you most uncomfortable about working in the inclusion employee network space? So what's the one thing that makes you most uncomfortable?
Yeah, perfect. I thought you were going to, for a second, ask them to do the plank challenge.
Well, hey, I don't want to reveal too much, but
Okay,
there is a plan for this year, and I'm sure you'll find out on LinkedIn
amazing.
hopefully soon what that will be. But I have got something in mind, and I'm just working on it at the moment.
Look forward to hearing about that. And on that note, where can people find you, or where can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so the best way to find me is on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
So we can post some of
yeah,
the my kind of link on there. But I would say, yeah, that is my kind of platform of choice. So yeah,
yeah.
please contact me on LinkedIn. Apologies if I don't get to your message straight away. As you know, a lot of these platforms have a lot of spam and things like that. But absolutely, yeah. Please connect with me and reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. And once again, thank you all for tuning in to the Behind the ERG podcast. I'm your host, Ed. He's our guest, Tox. And we appreciate you. So subscribe, comment, and share as wide as possible so we can do more and more of these episodes and bring more people across corporate spaces who are doing great things internally and externally to you as well. So, on that note, signing out, but look forward to the next episode. And also let us know who you want to be featured as well. You can email us at admin@behindtheerg.com, or you can drop a note in the comments. Take care. Peace.